Hey, and our next religion is Buddhism. Now, Buddhism is a fantastic, very exciting religion, one of my favorite religions. It's 2,500 years old, so it's pretty old, not when you look at the whole history of humankind, obviously, because we've been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Most of the modern religions have only really been in the last 4,000 years. So if we look at, if this was a big line of human history, when humans started evolving around here, most of the religions are really only in this tiny fraction. You know, in here is where World War I, World War II, the kings, the queens, and Jesus' birth, and Muhammad, and everything is over here. In the whole stretch of humanity, these modern religions have not really been around for very long. But we would call it, of the modern religions, one of the older ones, 2,500 years, so older than Islam, older than Christianity. It is predominates from Southeast Asia, so a little bit like Hinduism and Sikhism, which we've been looking at in other videos. And it does share some similarities with Hinduism, but it also doesn't. It has lots of differences. It has lots of differences to a lot of religions, really. So, one of the big things that we always look at in these religions are about their gods. Of course, the Abrahamic religions have one god. Hinduism, we looked at, has many different gods. Buddhism, there's a big sort of question mark around God. And it depends to which group of Buddhists you might talk to. Some would say there is a supreme entity, a supreme being, a sort of God. Others would question whether there was one. Some would say that you can't ever truly in your life prove whether there is a God or isn't a God, and that what you really should be doing with your life is spending your thoughts and time on helping others and making the world a better place. So it's a little bit of a question around God in Buddhism. But here are some of the main parts. The books, obviously these religions all have some sort of book or scripture, is known as the Tipitaka, what an amazing name, which is the sort of ways and sayings of the Buddha, who's a really important part of Buddhism. We'll find out a little bit more about him in a minute. Their temples, we'll call temples here. These are known as stupas, actually. Different sort of design, this Asian look. The buildings are of different architecture. This stupa does have a tall kind of spire, a little bit similar to a church or a mosque's minaret. And this is the symbol that we mostly use to represent Buddhism. It's known as the Dharma chakra, and it is a wheel that represents the Noble Eightfold Path, which we'll find out again as well. So that wheel, which has 8 spokes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, is what we use to represent Buddhism. So I think that's a good place to start. The Dharma chakra with the Eightfold Path. Now, in Buddhism, they believe the core tenet is the Four Noble Truths. And this was realized by a man called Siddhartha Gautama, who was a prince. He lived a very wealthy, good life. He's a bit like the prophet, so he's a bit like Jesus or Muhammad, peace be upon him. He is the guy who reveals the religion to the people. So he was a prince who lived in a fantastic, lovely, lavish life, and he never saw suffering or knew of it. And one day he escaped from his confines in the palace, and he saw on the streets a dying, sick man, and he saw the suffering and the poverty, and he realized that his world had been a lie, and that the world was full of suffering, and he wanted to understand what this was all about. And he went to meditate under a tree, and he spent a long time there, not eating, fasting, and through this meditation he gained a sort of connection with the universe. He became enlightened, is what it's called, and he saw the truths of the world. And the noble truth of the world is that there is suffering, and that the only way to break this cycle of suffering is to sort of break our cycle of greed. We suffer because we need, because we want so much. And the way that we can break this cycle of wanting is to follow the Eightfold Path. Now, I'm going to let you do a little bit of research on what the Eightfold Path is, but I'll give you a couple of ideas to do with the right speech, so saying the right things, being kind to other people, right actions, making sure that you are honest and truthful in the things that you do. And each of these is a sort of good, positive thing that you can do in your life to reduce the suffering of others. Because if we produce pain, then that pain is felt by other people. So it's a very loving religion. It's all about happiness and being kind, being thoughtful at its core tenet. And it is also one of the religions, a bit like Hinduism, that doesn't necessarily believe in heaven and hell, although there are some examples of it in different parts of religion. But it is another one that believes in reincarnation, which is the idea that when you die, you're born again as something else, so your soul leaves the body and becomes something else. If you had, for example, been really bad in your life, you might be reborn as a frog, or perhaps you'd be reborn as a blade of grass if you'd been terrible. But then if you were a really good frog through your life and did good things, maybe you'd come back as a lion one day. And if you were a good lion, you might come back as a human who might be a prince. So your actions determine what you are reborn as. The leader of Buddhists is in Tibet, which is a part of, well, it's now part of China. China stole from Tibet. But their leader is called the Dalai Lama, who is a man of peace. Their leader, very interestingly, unlike other leaders in religions, when he dies, the next leader, because they believe in reincarnation, is someone who was born at the very moment of his death. So they'll travel the world to find that person who was born at the moment of his death, who becomes the next Dalai Lama, and then is trained and raised to be the leader of the religion. Very interesting, very different to the other religions. Now, I've been doing that thing where I've waffled on and I've lost in my train of thought, but it doesn't matter, because that's where you come in. So what I'd like, again, as we're doing all of these, is a nice big poster. You're going to have a poster collection of all these religions. Nice big title at the top, Buddhism. I want to know all about it. Where do they pray? Where do they worship? What is the Noble Eightfold Path? I want to know all about the Noble Eightfold Path. That is your little bit of research to do. And get that emailed over to me. Any questions as well, just email them on. Off you go.